the carpet was literally pulled from beneath me. I did fall. I fell hard. I could have stayed down, get back up and keep going. And the way I look at it is that, and I guess a lot of people don't know this, that I interviewed at several other TV stations, and this was deep COVID. So people were laying off people, so there weren't any openings, and it felt like I was going down a long path, and there are doors all over, and I knocked on doors, and nothing was working. And I look at it as God had a door straight ahead for me, and there was a reason he would not open any of these doors. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
And I am on the path that he chose for me.
We would like to thank our title sponsor, B1 Bank. B1 Bank knows that entrepreneurs like you are always thinking one step ahead. So you need banking solutions that can keep up. It begins with lending. Does your business need working capital or financing for new equipment? How about a real estate or a construction loan? Good news, the B1 lending team is ready to learn your goals and help you find the best lending option available. Now let's talk about uncomplicating your daily cash flow. B1 offers a full array of treasury management services that let you collect funds faster, pay funds more efficiently, and access your information with powerful online tools. Most importantly, B1 understands the value of working with local nonprofits to build a stronger community. They believe in giving back through hands-on involvement with their B1 Community Outreach Program because it's simply the right thing to do. B1 Bank. Be uncomplicated. To learn more, visit b1bank.com. Equal housing lender, member FDIC. Hello, I'm Andrew McClendon, your host of the Next Entrepreneur Podcast. We're here today in the Propel Production Podcast Studio in Baton Rouge, and we welcome our guest, Miss Kiran Chawla. Kiran, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So you are founder of Unfiltered with Kiran. Why don't we start by you telling the few listeners of ours that might not know what that is, what it is exactly that you do.
Sure. Unfiltered with Kiran. The slogan is the news you deserve, unfiltered. And it is a 100% digital media news outlet, from a website to the news stories go out on a YouTube channel to all social media platforms from TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and whatnot.
And you have a brand new app.
I do. I forgot to mention that part, huh?
Yeah. So I just downloaded it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Your numbers are really, really impressive.
Well, thank you.
I was just thinking, if you look, you're about a year in.
Exactly a year in. Yes, sir.
So when you look at the numbers that you have today, it strikes me that you walked into your new business with a career reputation of delivering a good product, and that your audience was ready for it.
Yes.
And they latched on to your products, and it seems to be growing pretty significantly.
I am very blessed.
Yeah. So how would you define your reputation in the industry?
Oh, goodness.
Challenging first question.
Seriously, huh?
Yeah.
I think I have built it's trust. The public trusts me that I'm going to do my homework before I present anything to the public. And I don't care if I'm last to report it. My whole purpose is that it will be factual. It's not about being first, it's about being accurate. And I think that's the biggest thing that the public expects of me and appreciates of me, that it's going to be 100% accurate, at least to my knowledge.
So I'm a branding guy, right? I love branding, but I'm particularly interested in how an individual like you builds a brand from their reputation, right? So you're not selling a physical product like a building or a taco or whatever. Your product is on social media and it's shared for free.
Yep.
I just find that really interesting. Your product is your trust.
It is.
And that's your reputation, and therefore that's your brand.
It is.
I just think that's so cool.
And I guess I didn't think of it that way, but that is pretty awesome.
And you've developed a devout following. We talked about the numbers. Why do you think your followers are so loyal to you?
I think over the years in my time in Baton Rouge, I've been in Baton Rouge 12 years now. I think, to me, I work for the public. I've never worked for anyone specifically. Yes, I worked at a station.
That's how you thought of it.
Yes, I answer to the public, and that's the way I look at it. Yes, they paid me a paycheck and whatnot, and even now I work for Unfiltered, but I work for the public, and I truly feel like we are all in this as a team effort. From when I worked at my previous employer to even now, be it news that's happening, I get tagged in things left and right. And I'm not saying others do not. Everybody, I believe, does. But I try my best to keep up with everybody. If it's a small thing, maybe one simple phone call to somebody will make a difference for that one human being. And maybe it's not a big enough story to follow when you work at a big station. And that's not me saying, hey, they're not doing their job. That's not it at all. But you have to think outside that, the bigger impact. So sometimes it's that one person might not be a big enough story. And I think even now behind the scenes, if it's not a story, that person is going through something. If my one phone call can make a difference and fix something for them, I'm going to do it. And I think maybe that might set me apart, that I work for the people.
So that loyalty, I mean, the thing is they were accustomed, your followers that you have today, probably were accustomed at one point in seeing you elsewhere on television. Mm-hmm. But to go in and follow you today, it's just a few simple steps, right? Get the app, subscribe to your YouTube channel. It all shows up right there. But there's so much digital noise,
there is.
Right? So why invite more in? And the obvious answer is because they value the product, right? And maybe it goes back to that truth.
Yep.
I was intrigued with what you just said about serving the public. Truth is important in daily life. It's important in relationships and transactions. But I'm curious if you have processed why it is that it is important to you to provide the truth to the general public, most of which you wouldn't know personally. Like, what is it about?
They deserve it.
Yeah.
You as a human being, you deserve to know what's going on. My job as a reporter is to find that information and report it. Report all the facts, report all the sides, and let you, the viewer, decide for yourself what's happening.
So
that's it.
Were you like that younger? Can you look back in your young life and see memories or instances where that type was important to you?
Yes. I'll go back to it. I guess my birthday's in September, so I'm a Libra. The Libra is the scales. Oh. And maybe I'm a weirdo, but I like to read about that. Well, a Libra is very much so, well, I know you're in the wrong. However, I can also understand your side. So I've always tried to put myself in somebody else's shoes. A good friend of mine, Tara Wicker, always said that until your own feet burn, you can't understand somebody else's pain. And it's true. It's very true. So I try my best to put myself in somebody else's shoes, be it a victim of crime, be it somebody who just lost a house to a hurricane, or somebody who's fighting whatever it may be. And I guess that's how I proceed.
Yeah. Look, I read where you were voted the best TV news personality in the best of 225. And that's really interesting when you look at those numbers, because to me it tells a story of disruption, because you're not on TV.
Exactly.
And yet you were voted the best TV news personality.
Yep.
So to the general public, to your public, that's still who you are. Mm-hmm. They see you
as a TV reporter.
Yeah.
And in today's day and age, a lot of my followers have come up to me and said, if you have YouTube TV, you can watch it there. But with all the smart TVs they're pulling up the YouTube videos on their TV.
Yeah.
So in their heads, I am still a TV reporter.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very cool. But also percentages were pretty telling. I mean, you were wildly in first, ahead of the others. It was very impressive.
Thank you.
So it says a lot about what you're doing.
Thank
and
you.
So I was curious, when you look back over the last few years and all that you've been through in, starting your business, et cetera, when you received that recognition from Best of 225, how did that make you feel?
That my work is paying off.
Yeah.
The public supports me. The public appreciates me. The public appreciates what I'm doing.
But in the first year,
I think I sound like a broken record when I constantly say I cannot thank the public enough for their love and support.
Yeah.
I say that over and over and over, but I mean that. I am who I am today because of the public, because of their trust in me, because of their love and their support of me. Think about it. Who am I otherwise? If I were to move tomorrow to Atlanta, nobody's going to know who Kiran Chawla is there. Whereas here, I love when I'm out eating and people just walk up and say, "Hey, I just wanted to say hi." I love that.
Yeah.
And it's not an ego. I'm one of those people. My next door neighbor and I, we don't knock on each other's doors. We just walk right in. So I like when people just walk up and say, "Hey, I'm so-and-so. It's so nice to meet you."
I split my time in between here and Austin, and I'm not a big TV guy. And so I'll be honest, I don't watch local news. However, when Allison got you here and I started doing the initial research, I was very excited to talk to you. But the ladies here in the office were just going crazy. They were. And so we just sat in the conference room a few hours ago, and man, I tell you connect with your audience because they're very passionate about what you do. It's very cool to see.
Again, I am blessed. I really, at the end of the day, it's like when you say that I'm left speechless. I feel like a broken record. I am blessed.
Yep. All right, let's go back to the beginning. You had confirmed to me that you are a first-generation Indian American.
I am.
And that resonated with me because I'm first-generation Scottish English. I'm one of 7. You're one of 2.
Uh-huh.
Where your parents are from India?
They are.
And where did
New
they?
Delhi.
New Delhi.
The capital.
So do you go back there? Do you see your family?
My mom and I wanted to go back even the 1 year that I was off, figuring out I'm going and what's next between former employer and launching Unfiltered. But with COVID, we couldn't go.
Yeah.
But I went for a cousin's wedding, and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to accept a completely brand new world and culture. And me being Indian, I'm not going to say it's a shock, but the very first time that I think I was old enough to go and accept and realize what was going on, I was a little like, wait, what's this? What's that? And my parents had to explain things to me. But my mom and dad have been in the United States more than 2/3 of their life.
Right.
So going to India is more like, whoa, this is different for us too. But as long as you're open, it's like traveling anywhere, Australia or Europe, Africa, wherever.
Yeah.
Hawaii. You have to be willing to be open to accepting something new. And I went in with that perspective, and it's beautiful.
That's awesome. I was in Istanbul, Turkey, a few weeks ago. Very different culture. You'd mentioned COVID. I actually ended up with COVID when I was there. And so I had to quarantine for a few days there. It's a fascinating place. It's a beautiful city, and it really is stunning. When you fly over it, it seems like it never ends. It's a population of 20 million people. But they have the calls to prayer 5 times a day that start at 4:30 in the morning and go till like 10:30 at night, and publicly broadcast. And you start to feel a different culture in different ways.
Of course.
It was really fascinating. So how do you celebrate your culture here in your life today in the U.S.?
What do you mean by that?
Like I was actually talking with one of your friends, Katie here, and she says you do that well. That you teach her about parts of the Indian culture? You make different things, and she may have been talking about food, or
I cook all sorts of Indian food. I mean, I love cooking, but I've watched my mom over the years and growing up, and I've made sure I've learned how to do things, but I love to experiment with all sorts of foods. But Indian food, I mean, going to a restaurant is one thing, but cooking it at home, it's like saying that you're going to go, I don't know, get some stewed chicken or something at a restaurant when you want it in your pajamas and you want to just chill at home. It's that kind of thing, I guess. But I have never been shy in saying I am Indian. I'm proud to be an Indian. I'm proud to be an American. But I also feel the divide in this country is because of an ignorance of cultures. I don't think people are purposely being divisive. I think it's one of those that people just don't understand other cultures, other traditions, other languages, food, whatnot. So I have an amazing following and the people love it. So when I go to a party or my brother got married or I have the henna, I will post those photos to my page and just to let people know. And if I even come across to one person that, hey, the artwork on your hands or the dot on your forehead or your attire, whatnot, and people love it. And I love sharing that world with me. And Katie's right. Yes, I love to cook. And I wear all the jewelry and when I'm going to actual events.
Oh, that's fantastic.
But as far as celebrating the culture, I mean, I celebrate Christmas, I celebrate Halloween. I'm born and raised in this country, so I've celebrated all of that. But when I was much younger, it was hard to celebrate Indian holidays here because there weren't many things to do. Whereas now, when you go to the bigger cities like the Houstons or New Yorks, there are huge parades for our holidays, and it's like being in India. Yeah. But here in Baton Rouge, I mean, New Orleans, I guess, would be your next big city. We don't have any parades. We have big church services for if it's one of our God's birthdays or things like that. So I try my best to make it to that. I am religious, and I try to go to church as often as I possibly can. And
yeah, good stuff. Whenever you travel, particularly in, many parts of the world, you run across people in cultures that know multiple languages, 3, 4, 5 languages. I met a lady on this trip who knew 7 languages, but you speak, 3 languages, which is like, whenever I travel, I always feel bad because I almost know one.
I almost
know English, not completely, but
in that case, I almost know 3.
Yeah. So, but that always impresses me. So you grew up in New Orleans. Your parents ended up in New Orleans. Slidell.
Yes.
Okay. And where did you go to school? Were you in high school in New Orleans?
Slidell.
Oh, in Slidell
North
as well.
Shore High.
Okay.
Yes. But I went to college, Loyola University in New Orleans.
Okay. I read that you kind of started in the industry. You got an internship.
I did while I was still in high school.
And was that in Slidell as well?
No, we lived in Slidell, but the internship was at WWL, the CBS affiliate in New Orleans. And even back then, I think the high school offered teaching and medical internships. I wasn't interested in either one of those. So I went to the intern program and the instructor over it, and I said, I don't want to do either of these. I really want to do journalism. In my head, my decision was made what I want to do. So why not use an internship to learn that instead of wasting my time in something I'm not interested in or I don't plan to do? So I remember she told me, she goes, if you can find somewhere and they'll give you credit for it, we're good with it. So I went to WWL and I said, this is what I want to do. And they said, we don't do internships for high school. And I guess I sold myself well enough that they said, I guess we'll make an exception for you and we'll put you on a 2-week trial basis. I said, sounds good. They said they have to approve downstairs. Downstairs was news. If they approve of you and you approve of them in 2 weeks, we'll come back to the table and we'll see. I said, sounds good. So 2 weeks go by. I went back upstairs to the HR guy and he tells me they love you down there. So
what were you doing?
Basically a news intern. I was running and gunning for them, whatever they needed. If it was, I wasn't above going and getting somebody's coffee if that's what they needed. But I hey, go out with this photographer, go get this interview, sounds good. Come back and listen to it and hand it off to a reporter, whatever it was needed, because I wanted to get all the experience I could. I'm, 18, 17, however old I was. I mean, technically I'm only 21 now, so I was probably only 3. I'm kidding. But I mean, I was young. I wanted to learn anything and everything.
Did you love it? Were you loving it?
I did. And
did it seem as fast-paced and,
yes,
kind of mysterious or whatever?
Yes. I think the best way to put it is that adrenaline rush. At 4:55, the news goes on at 5. At 4:55, it's one of those that your brain is just like, are we going to make it? Are we going to make it? Oh my God. Did my package attach? Did this happen? Did that happen? It's just, some people can't handle it. It's too stressful. But I think that's my life now.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm constantly running and gunning and going here and there. And it's like I was, late here because I was in the middle of trying to hurry up and get an investigation out and make sure it posted on time.
I was like, after doing the research, I was like, how could she possibly take a break and come talk to us?
Because I promised I would be here. That's why.
Thank you for that. So your 2-week internship turned into a
job right out of high school. So I worked all through that summer. That was the summer of 2005. And so Katrina came and stayed working all through college. And then after Katrina, I had to quit because it was Loyola flooded. Obviously, the house in New Orleans flooded. The whole world was flipped upside down in New Orleans, including the WWL studios. We came up to Baton Rouge. So I purposely switched to LSU for that semester because, hey, I can still keep the job and go to LSU. Well, eventually the studio was fixed and we moved back to New Orleans. Well, back then everybody was living in Baton Rouge and going back to New Orleans. So it was taking 3 hours one way in between school and a flooded house and a flooded school. And I couldn't manage it. And I hated to do it, but I had to quit. And thankfully, when things got back to normal and I was able to get back to my own house in New Orleans, I got hired on at WDSU, the NBC affiliate in New Orleans. So, and that was a full-time job. So I work full-time now and went to school full-time. And I still don't know how I did that. And again, though, I got even more experience because now it's a full-time job and the role is different. So I'm blessed. I really do feel all these nearly 20 years have given me the experience to build up where I am today because I was able to be a photographer, be an editor, be a reporter, be a producer, that I've worn all these hats to know how it works.
We would like to thank MBD Automation for their support of the Next Entrepreneur podcast. MBD Automation is a mechanical install contractor with a program-centric focus. So what do these guys do? They install conveyor systems, VRCs, platforms, singulators, sorters, and all sorts of other types of automated equipment. Who do they work for? They work for systems integrators, manufacturers, and end users in fulfillment centers, airports, mail processing facilities, and projects in the defense industry. MBD Automation works for numerous Fortune 500 companies across the United States and has a list of international clients that they perform work for in the U.S. as well. If MBD Automation can help you on your next project, you can find them online at mbdautomation.com. Kiran, I wanted to get into some of the interesting things that you covered in your early years, but I first want to cover this. And so you ended up getting your degree in journalism.
Yes, sir.
From Loyola, right?
Yes, sir.
And a minor in criminal justice.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you kind of knew back then that you had an interest in like reporting on that type stuff, crime and all that juicy stuff, right? That's interesting.
You know what's weird? I don't know if back then I knew it.
But
I enjoyed all my...
Is that a common combo for journalism? Criminal justice?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I just wanted to do in criminal justice, so I did it.
Yeah, yeah.
In case I ever decided I wanted a master's, I figured, let me do criminal justice.
Oh, then maybe a law degree or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so, and that was from Loyola as well.
New Orleans.
Yeah, that's your mom.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so, some of the things that you were involved in, Katrina, you mentioned early on. What are some of the, those stories literally go on forever. Right? What are some of the other big stories that you covered?
Here or in New Orleans?
Well, I'm thinking, kind of early-ish in your career or early to mid-career. You mentioned the BP spill.
The BP oil spill, the hurricanes. The BP oil spill lasted forever. That alone, I feel like we were down in Venice and down south just months on end. I remember covering the Pelicans drenched in oil and walking the beaches, and I won't ever forget that. And I still remember the national networks were down there. And little old us were reporting right alongside of them. But that was a big disaster for Louisiana.
It was massive.
It really was. And then obviously Katrina, that was a story that just kept on giving, unfortunately, that I think you can still go to New Orleans, you're coming up on 17 years later now, and you will probably still see remnants of Katrina.
Sure, absolutely.
The Super Bowl win, that was a big one.
Yeah.
But that was that's one of those stories you can't put into words, that how good it felt I think we all looked at it as the people of New Orleans were the saints, that we had never been good enough for the world. And I still remember the Chicago Bears saying, finish off what Katrina started. And I get it. It's the rivalry during football, but it hurt.
Yeah.
It's things like that. And then when we won the Super Bowl, when we weren't supposed to, it just felt like, hey, New Orleans, we can come back.
Oh, man. That was, you really can't put into words what that was like.
I remember crying when they won.
Yeah. That was so strong.
Yep. But it was the whole story from Sean Payton to Drew Brees' story, and how they all came together. I think all of New Orleans could recognize and appreciate that, because we were all in that same boat, literally and figuratively.
Exactly. Some of the images will last with us forever of Katrina. But even when you think of the BP oil spill, when we first saw the video of where they had a camera down at the ocean floor or the Gulf floor, and where the oil was coming out, and we're like, this is not good. This is bad.
It was one of those that, is this even reality?
Yeah.
In the day and age we live in, this is actually happening?
Yeah, because it was like, how in the world are they going to fix this?
Yes.
How long? And it was just gushing out. Some of those images, stick with you.
There are still days, till today, there is that curve when you're making 610 and it splits going towards Metairie and Kenner or going downtown.
Right.
When you make that sharp turn, I remember during Katrina, all I saw was rooftops. Till this day, when I make that drive, that's the picture that goes in my head, and all I see is rooftops.
Yeah. You had a lot of, I have to imagine that some of those news stories, the disaster type ones we're talking about, they have to be really challenging when you look. But I guess they're also, I was going to ask you, what are some of your more rewarding ones? And I'm sure that some of the challenging ones are also rewarding, but are there any that stick out that, maybe weren't disasters, but, you found rewarding?
I covered a story on Will Johannesson, a young man who Special Olympics, he got to go, and I saw his video posted on Facebook, and he got a letter saying he's been invited to the Special Olympics. I got teary-eyed just watching his video. This young man, he's got Down syndrome, and he is just so excited. I reached out and I said, can I do a story on your son? And we won an Emmy on that. But it wasn't about the winning the Emmy, meeting Will. And this young man is so funny. But till this day, we are friends. And my interviews, a lot of them stay in my life. In fact, last year, and I don't know if I even mentioned this, but we did a big rig relief effort to where we filled up an 18-wheeler and took it down south to the devastated areas from Hurricane Ida. Will and his parents came and donated there because of the relationship we built when I interviewed him.
That's fantastic. I was curious, when and if you think of like some of the other stories that you cover, crime, there's there's deaths, there's murders, there's fire, there's the things that we see on news, the negative things. How do you step away from that? How do you not carry that with you? How do you separate from that from work? Is that?
I don't think I do. And I know that's not healthy.
Yeah.
But if I'm being honest, I don't, unfortunately. The news happens 24/7. There is no on and off button. There is no 8 to 5 job for me.
Yeah.
But
isn't that potentially a lot of weight to carry?
It is.
If you're seeing a lot of like
it is.
Some of the darker sides of humanity.
It is. And a lot of them take a toll on me, especially when it comes to kids. Just had a little 2-year-old boy found dead in a trash can, and I cannot comprehend that.
Yeah.
But I love cooking, like I said. When I was trying to figure out what's next, I made ends meet by baking cookies, cakes, and whatnot. So I feel like I separate when I get to cook, and I love trying random recipes, making up my own recipes, painting, walking, traveling. Those are my ways to kind of try to separate.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say it always works. Working out, that's my...
Yeah, I agree
because
with that.
my brain is at, hey, Zumba, let's focus on just that. And that's my 1 hour to step away from the phones.
Yeah. I have found that if you can exercise, if I'm ever not feeling right, or, if I exercise, I
feel healthy.
Yeah.
Mentally healthy.
I mean, I always hear about the endorphins kicking in, and that's absolutely for real.
Yep.
But it's not always easy as you bounce around
not.
to stay on a exercise routine or
it
regimen.
It is not.
But man, it's effective.
It is.
Works.
And I try my best to make my classes.
Yeah, I did have a question, and it kind of related to as you broke into the industry as an Indian American. Were there challenges around that? I mean, were there ever instances where that was a problem or worked against you, or not so much?
I don't know if it worked against me. I mean, yes, I've been turned down in the profession that you're not ready to be a reporter, or we don't want to represent you. When I was told early on in the profession, you have to have an agent to get you places. And I got turned down, and guess what? All of that acted as fuel to the fire. I promised myself, just because they said no, that didn't mean that they were going to choose for me. This isn't my profession.
Yeah.
And yes, I did not have any guidance in the profession. I didn't have anybody who, hey, you're Indian, let me lean on you. But it wasn't about the being Indian and I have to lean on you. I have lots of confidants and friends, 20 years that I've been friends with now, who I lean on for everything, and we've become family now. So I will say that my graduation party, I remember people asking my parents, so what is she going to do, medicine or business? And neither.
Like there were two answers.
Yes. And because you just had to answer medicine or business. You were going to be a doctor, or you were going to open up your own business, which I guess I did 20 years later.
Yeah.
And when my parents said journalism, they were just like, oh. And I mean, they're all proud of me if I go home or going to an Indian party or whatnot, and I see all these people. They're all just like, hey, we love you, we support you, we're proud of you. But I think my mom and dad are the reason I am where I am today. They've supported me all along, and I wanted to go on this venture of journalism, and they said, do it.
Yeah, that's cool. You've described investigations as being like a 1,000-piece puzzle.
Puzzles. I know, I'm a nerd.
Yeah.
I love puzzles.
Yeah. Help me understand, which obviously you're talking about putting the pieces of a story together,
Yes.
right?
But even a real puzzle, you will come to my house and find pieces all over the floor.
Yeah.
Because I love putting a puzzle
You
together.
truly love puzzles.
I really do.
So explain to us how investigative reporting works. I mean, I kind of think of it, are you reporting facts that you learn? Are you trying to help? I mean, are you ever like, I'm going to try to solve this crime? kind of thing. I don't know how that works.
I don't know if it's solved the crime. It's more of uncovering corruption or holding the powerful accountable, that just because you are in a position of power doesn't mean you can dictate or rule like a dictator. There are laws and policies and whatnot that you have to follow, and it's holding those people accountable.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've actually solved a crime.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying now. But when you look at, when you talk about solving a crime, the general public thinks that that's the police, law enforcement's job to do that, right? We can all comprehend that. There's times where there could be a bad apple within that group, in the law enforcement group. Well, are we going to get, full disclosure in those situations? And I think that's kind of where, one type of, investigative reporting that you do is to help bring, get into, to tell the real stories when maybe it's not coming out otherwise.
Exactly. That's what I do. Yep.
That's what you do. And so it's interesting as well as when you do your job well, you had said this and I made note of it, that you could lead to someone getting justice, which is very important. You could lead to a law being changed, which would be incredibly powerful, or someone ending up behind bars or something like that. So that ability to make an impact that's got to be a large part of your driving force.
It is 100%.
I also read, your passion about giving a voice to the voiceless. Tell us about that.
I would go back to 2016, the amount of people I think I helped get FEMA trailers. I will not forget the people were begging that, hey, I've got a FEMA trailer sitting on my property and it's sitting crooked and it's sitting here. I can't get into it. Well, they've been calling and calling and calling and calling for months and weeks. They can't do anything. One call and guess what? As we're still on the property, FEMA drives up. Or, hey, it's been 2.5 months. These people have been waiting. This person's handicapped and they are driving 4 hours one way to come fix their house. What's the delay? The next day they have a trailer. And it felt so good.
Yeah. And so that was a busy summer. That was the year of the floods, the FEMA trailers relating to the floods, right, in Baton Rouge. I think during that same summer, there was a lot of racial tension in the city. There was protests. I guess that was a lot of the Black Lives Matter kind of conflicts that were and marches that were going on. And I remember in front of the police headquarters here, it was barricaded up for weeks and weeks. And so it was a real tense. Well, I think during that time was 3 police officers killed at the car wash on Airline.
Technically 4 if you want to include Nick. Yes, he died 6 years later, but Nick's life changed that July 17th, 2016. Right.
So it ended up being 4 then.
It was.
Yeah. And there was so much going on. It's been a crazy few years.
It has.
Right?
This city has been through a lot.
But at the same time, and during the same time, we also started to see news reporting change. We started to see it became less about the truth, maybe, at least in the eyes of some followers, for network television. And you begin to see division. A certain network would lean in one direction and another network would lean in the other. And
which goes completely against the rules of journalism.
Yeah. Like journalism standards were thrown out.
They were.
And I always felt that the networks had to do that, or felt that they needed to do that to survive financially. That if they were just reporting the news, that could be a little too bland. And with all the other digital content and ways that people can get their news, if they weren't being, extreme in some way, how were they going to get the attention? And then their numbers go down, advertising dollars drop off. And so they had to find a way to survive. That's my theory on what was happening. It was impacting everyone. It was making people anxious because if you turn on one channel and you hear the dialogue on that network, you're like, what in the world is going on? And a 180-degree story on another network, and they're not even close to being on the same page, which is not how it's supposed to work.
Yeah.
Right? So where is that going? What's next for that? You're an independent reporter, and so you can step away from the fray and you can tell the truth, right? Is that where it's all going? I mean, is that what it's going to take to get to the truth? Or do you see anything happening with network reporting where they could, of course, there's some examples where they do a decent job of that, right? But generally speaking, the big networks that we think of are seem to be either on one extreme or the other. Do you see that changing?
I don't know.
You don't really have to worry about it because you're doing your thing.
I was about to say that. I'm trying to think how to say that nicely, but yeah.
You're doing what we need. You're doing what needs to happen.
I worry about myself, and I say worry. I concentrate on what I am providing the public and not so much so what the net. I'm not following anybody. I kind of did my own thing.
Right.
To where I don't know if there's guidance as to what I'm doing, but I know what I'm doing is working and the public's liking it, so I'm going to keep going.
Yeah, and I love that it's, again, I'm using the word disruptive, and that it's maybe disruptive or maybe it's just new, but your business model is it's pretty fascinating to me because before social media, getting a voice was a challenge.
It was.
Even with social media, you can have a voice, but if you can't get it out there, you don't have anyone listening to your voice. To have the platforms and to be able to leverage them like you have, and now your voice is heard, that's a real accomplishment to get there. I mean, it's a fascinating thing for me.
Thank you.
So I want to get into the business side of that.
Sure.
It's one thing to be able to do what you're doing, to have your skill set, your intellect, and your passion for the truth, but somebody's got to pay you, right?
Yes.
That you could only do it so long before, if it didn't catch on, you have to find something else to do to pay the bill. Hannis Bourgeous provides accounting services, litigation support, as well as tax and assurance services to companies and individuals throughout the region. With offices in Baton Rouge, Denham Springs, New Orleans, and Hammond, their team of professionals have a wide range of specialized expertise and give personalized attention to each client they work with. HTB serves all types of business structures, including corporations, private businesses, startups, individuals, and more. So call them today to learn how they can help you. Reach out to them by phone or learn more at their website, www.htbcpa.com. A little testimonial here. HTB has been my accounting firm for over 30 years and have guided my initial company from startup to expanding to numerous operating companies. HTB has provided guidance in helping us expand across the U.S., doing business in more than 30 states. Flat out, HTB has made all the difference in the world to our business. This podcast is sponsored by NAI Latter & Blum, Louisiana's leading commercial real estate firm, offering expertise in every discipline, including office, industrial, retail, multifamily, and corporate services. Their agents guide you through the real estate process from start to finish, using a host of marketing, prospecting, and analytical technologies. As leading entrepreneurs, your valuable time and resources should align with the most trusted name in commercial real estate, NAI Latter & Blum. Learn how they can work for you at www.ladderblum.com. In break there, you just had to check to see if your team was calling. But when you started, there was no team.
I didn't have a team. No, right? It was all me.
And the fact that a year later, you have the numbers you have and you have a team, that's crazy. All right, so let's talk about how you got to that point. So when you started, what did it look like? How do you report, produce, get content out there, get on all the platforms, try to find sponsor? How in
You
the
don't
world
sleep
do you do
or
that?
eat. That's how.
So what did it look like? I mean, the first 6 months, what was that like?
It was rough. It was hard. I did not do every single piece of news there was to do. And the goal initially, let me back up. I thought I was launching Unfiltered with Kiran to do nothing but investigations. My plan was never to do day-to-day news.
Okay.
But then a few big stories happened. I think it was, unfortunately, the state trooper who was found dead in his unit, and he had been there 12 hours. I broke that, and I went out there, and I was getting information nobody else had, and I was just doing my job.
Right.
And I think that kind of gave me legs that, she's doing news, not just investigations. And I think it was one of those that you kind of accidentally started it. Now you have to keep providing it.
Yeah.
So I kept going down that route. But if you look at it, I was doing more investigations in the first 6 months than I have in the last 6 months or 9 months, should I say. And then rolls around January of this year and things changed. Launched a brand new website. It's a news website now. We launched an app, and it was focused on getting the day-to-day news. And now I am blessed enough that I actually do have a team working with me to where I'm going back to focusing on investigations, which that's cool. My adrenaline rush.
So how do you do that? I mean, you've got to, the things I just said, how do you get your first sponsors? How do you got to go out and sell them. You got to go out and talk to them, right?
Yep.
And you got to sign them up, and they're looking for numbers. They're looking for content.
They are.
But you got all these balls in the air at the same time. How do you get to the point where you say, I need help? Can you afford to pay them? Or is that this continually chasing this thing like, I can't really, but I got to have them kind of thing?
I think it turned out to be that way. And then now we are starting to finally make money. But it's also, I think the advertisers, potential businesses are realizing, wait, hold up. We actually have another venue for solid news. And kind of like you said, people are seeing for themselves the numbers are growing. And social media is where it's at nowadays.
Right.
We're all glued to the phones, unfortunately. And when you're sitting at your child's soccer practice or swim lessons, guess what you're doing for an hour? You're not reading a book. You think you are, and then you think you're going to text back one person, and instead you end up scrolling, and now you're watching videos, and an hour's gone by. So that's where people are wanting to advertise. So when people now, their companies are starting to reach out to us and ask us, hey, how do we advertise with you? When they see the numbers.
Really?
There's, again, we are blessed. They're reaching out, and when they're asking for the numbers as far as, hey, your viewership and whatnot, we're providing it to them, and they're saying, whoa. So
that's where we want to be.
Yes.
So you have a marketing director?
Yes.
That's saying a lot about your 1-year-old media company.
Yeah.
You know,
my goal, I had set a goal for myself that on my 1-year anniversary, I wanted to launch an app. And we did it. We launched on June 9th. We launched an app. Mid-March, we launched a brand new website. And I have goals for myself internally in my head that I need to be at this place with this company end of this year where I want to be. The 2nd year anniversary where I want to be. So I'm working towards it.
Yeah, that's cool. You know, we talk a lot on this podcast, but particularly recently, about the leap. The leap when you have an idea, you want to get your business going, but then the revenue's not there. And it's a leap of faith.
It is.
You could dig a hole financially. Mm-hmm. You could, have all sorts of things not go right.
Yep.
When you look back on that time when you're making the leap, was there a lot of fear there, anxiety? Were you positive? What was it like?
I was excited.
Yeah.
It was a brand new venture, and this This was me now.
Yeah.
There was nobody telling me what I can and cannot do. And this was, the phrase that take the road less traveled. And I did it. And maybe I should have been afraid that what if, but I had always told myself I'm going to give it 1 year. By June 9th of 2022, if this is not working out, I'm going to go ahead and call it quits and figure out what's next in life. You can see where we stand a year later.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm moving forward and continuing with it, because I hit my 1 year mark for myself of where I want it to be.
Now, with your team, with, the amount of remote working that went on during the COVID years, is your team together or are they spread out?
We're all spread out.
It's all remote?
Yep, we're all remote.
And so do you have some people doing reporting?
I've got a writer.
A writer. When you think about the you love your investigations, but when you think about, what those are or what type of investigations, what is it that excites you the most? Is there any type of story or investigation that...
When I can hold the powerful accountable. When I can bring to light things that they're purposely doing their best to hide from me, and be it public records or whatever the case might be, when I can go around them and prove, look, I know you didn't want this out, but I found the proof.
Yeah.
Or a reason for things going wrong. I think that just...
So when you do your job, Kiran, there's people that like to hear what you have to say, and then there's some people that might not like to hear what you have to say.
Yes.
Right? Because maybe you're shedding light, and they don't want that light to be shown. But how do you deal with that? I mean, there's certain people that could then kind of try to block you and make things more difficult. But that, how do you deal with that?
Keep trucking along.
Yeah, just keep.
Don't give up.
Yeah.
I think, not unfortunately, fortunately, that's been the lesson learned for me, that given what happened with my former employer, the carpet was literally pulled from beneath me. I did fall. I fell hard. I could have stayed down, get back up and keep going. And the way I look at it is that, and I guess a lot of people don't know this, that I interviewed at several other TV stations, and this was deep COVID. So people were laying off people, so there weren't any openings, and it felt like I was going down a long path and there are doors all over, and I knocked on doors and nothing was working. And I look at it as God had a door straight ahead for me, and there was a reason he would not open any of these doors. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
And I'm on the path that he chose for me.
Did you feel like the doors that were closed were more COVID related, or were they...
Both. It was COVID related, and I did not hide what happened with me at the past employer. And I guess in today's day and age, people don't want to hear, oh my God, we can't take the risk of bringing her on then. And I wasn't going to lie to anybody. So I went ahead and told them up front, hey, this is what happened. And one of the news directors, we had a Zoom interview, and I saw the look in his face. And that look is what made me decide I'm done. And that same evening after that Zoom interview, I created this logo.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So when I think of Unfiltered with Kiran, I think that your point is being made that you're unfiltered and others may be filtered, right?
I don't know if my goal at that time when I did that name was that others are filtered. Again, I'll go back to it, not trying to be rude, but I wasn't worried about the others. I'm worried about what I'm providing. And my goal was that I want the raw truth for the public.
Yeah.
And it just, literally, I was sitting there and it just came to me. I was like, what could I call this? And I thought about KC New Beginnings, and I was like, that's too boring. And it just came to me. And even the slogan, it just came to me. The news you deserve, unfiltered.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's effective. Because it tells a story, whether you may have implied it or not, whether that was ever an intent of yours. People see your product, they can feel and know that it's unfiltered. But it does kind of make a point that maybe not all news is unfiltered, which we
and
all
I'll leave
know.
that for the public to decide.
Well, we all know the answer to that one, right? Okay, so as you look into the future of your media company? How do you see that growing? What does growth potential look like?
I don't know that. And being in the business that I'm in, the field I'm in, I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. And that's the truth. It could be crime, it could be a feature, it could be anything. But I guess news is just so unpredictable. And I've sat through so many interviews where it's the news director asking you, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And that was me, the younger me. And I had goals that in 5 years I have to do this, in 10 years I have to be here and whatnot. That I stopped doing that now.
Yeah.
I literally now take it week by week because that's all my brain even functions. And my goal, of course, is to keep Unfiltered going, bring on more advertisers, and bring on more people to help the public. I feel at this point I'm at the point that I have several people constantly reaching out. Can you tell my story? Can you tell my story? I'm one me. It's hard to tell everybody's stories by myself. There's only so much time in the day for me to be able to focus even a little bit on me or cooking or whatever and give the work.
Yeah.
So I'd like down the road to be able to have a staff that we can respond to everybody, even if it's not an on-air story, but at least help them. If it's, hey, my energy bill is $2,000 this month. Okay, that might be a story. But my energy bill is $500 this month and it's an increase in $400. That might be a simple call to energy. The fact that we as a media outlet make it compared to the customer, we're going to get more attention on it than the customer is.
Yeah. Well, I think it's us old entrepreneurial guys that look at an upstart business like yours and see the success that you've had in 1 year, can see like there's going to be a very bright future for you. It's already there.
Thank you.
And of course, you're in business 1 year and some of us old guys been around for a while, but it makes perfect sense to me that, a 5-year, 10-year plan is not, part of what you think of right now. But I think with what you're building, with your brand, with your reputation, it's scalable. And you look at what you've done in building a team in a year, I can see where you're a front runner in that industry right now locally.
Thank you.
And, with your, connections with New Orleans and around the state and into Mississippi, I can see where, as you build your team, that you have a lot of growth potential. So
I appreciate
I'll
that.
hold that vision for you.
Thank you.
How about that?
Thank you.
So last question,
Yes, sir.
wrapping up. And you may have been asked this or you may have asked other people this, but what would you tell a young person who's either considering going into journalism, either starting college and going through that program, or exiting even and going into the market in the industry of journalism? What advice would you give them?
It's tough. It's very hard, and I don't mean that as a discouraging, don't do it, but be prepared ahead of time. It's hard. This is not an 8-to-5 job. It takes a toll on a family. There's not much money in it. In fact, a photographer friend of mine used to always say, you're going to be on food stamps. In the beginning, you're going to be on food stamps, but it's rewarding. If you love what you do, it's not a job. It is rewarding, and I love what I do. So if your heart's in there, do it. I remember when we'd get interns, the first question I'd ask them is, why do you want to do this? If they'd answer me, I want to be on TV, I'd be like, nope, this is not the profession to be on TV. Right. This is the profession to hopefully make a difference. Hopefully tell somebody's story. Hopefully do something good for the people. I look at this job as a public service job.
Well, look, you're very passionate about what you do. And I think more important from what I've seen is the passion that I see your followers and the people I was talking about earlier that they have for what you do, which is, that's something. It really is something. So congrats on what you're doing, continued success in all you do. And I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to come talk to us.
You're welcome. Thank you all for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. so enjoyed that conversation with Kiran. She has a very disruptive business model, and I think it's very scalable. I think when you look years down the road, you will see that she has built a tremendous business. At the root of her brand is trust. She talks about it a lot. She works for the people. She's earned the respect for the people and has built an incredible following. So we appreciate her coming in, sharing her stories. Couldn't believe she was able to take the time out to talk with us. But we appreciate you guys watching, and we'll catch you next time. We would like to thank our title sponsor, B1 Bank. They can be found online at b1bank.com. The Next Entrepreneur is produced by Propel Productions. You can find more information at propelyourstory.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the Next Entrepreneur podcast and hit the bell for notifications. You can also follow us on social media. The links are in the description below.